The show, Steph, DogFoot, you are the first
I'm honored.
political guest on this podcast, and fingers crossed we'll have quite a few guests after you. But yeah, this really came about as a conversation after we did an open mic, and I jumped in your car and I learned more about your story. You are the founder of Siao Char Bo Comedy, which is a roaring success, mostly at the projector and Golden Mile Tower, and it's phenomenal what you have done with that show. You've started comedy in like 2015?
Yeah, 2014, 2015. Yeah.
I mean, so it's like 10 years.
Yeah.
And you are still very young.
Yes. Good to hear.
So I really like to trace your journey, because I feel like it's really interesting to explore that, especially coming from where we are in Singapore,
True.
and also your background, because you train as a lawyer.
Yes.
And there's some overlap, obviously. You're speaking, you have any logical arguments, you're making a point in court, or maybe you're making a funny point in comedy, but like, how does that work for you? Like, can you take us through?
It's a good question. I think because I actually really got into like performing when I was in law school, and I feel like my time in law school, I feel like studying was like a small section of it. But I think it's more of that, like, I feel like law sort of like, teaches you, it teaches you discipline in a sense, because you're writing like long essays and submissions, and like on some level it feels like after you've spent like hours and like weeks working on this like one piece of like writing that you have to submit in court and like be able to defend and present, then I feel like creative writing doesn't seem that hard in a way. And I think I started in spoken word poetry, and I feel a lot of spoken word poetry that I started with was very argumentative, and I thought of it as a bit like an argument as well. But like for me, the most important thing is that teaching is like discipline, which is something I'm still working on. But like discipline and like sitting down and like making yourself write something because of the consequences, but also because you're like, for me, because I'm supposed to be in an office for like 9 hours a day. So whatever other time I have to be like very careful with it.
I mean, that's the thing, is phenomenal that you talk about discipline. I can't think of somebody else who's more disciplined than you. Obviously, there are like Navy SEALs and that sort of thing. But like, you have a full-time job as a lawyer.
Yeah.
You run a monthly show with Siao Char Bo Comedy, which takes like, I think, a lot of effort to just kind of get the show out, promote it, follow up with like, I mean, I'm on your chat group, and there's so much like organization stuff, like little details, and then what do you do with the rest of your life? Like, exciting for work, reading for pleasure, and organizing for work, organizing for pleasure.
Do non-writing things. It's like I do drag.
Oh, I'm surprised. So tell me a bit more, because I don't really know about females doing drag. I mean, obviously we know very much about males doing drag. Where do you do your drag?
So I started out. I started out doing drag in like 2016. Joined this burlesque group, and basically, but to perform in different places, and then I think with like poetry, comedy, and drag, it all like for me it all coalesces into like I am never like 100% comfortable with being in the center of attention. I mean, I am, but at the same time, I'm also like it's a weird thing to think about. But I think I come to a point where I realize actually the part I enjoy is a community aspect. It's like bringing people together and like creating like a space for people to being known for like the person that brought all these different styles and like different kinds of performance together. So
Because I know Siao Char Bors Comedy really supports women and queer community, and also for your drag show, I suppose that's the theme as well, women and queers.
yeah, kind of, yeah.
And your 1 hour special, which I saw the first part of it, I was on the show with the open mic section, and it's called Gold Star Bisexual, which is hilarious. You had all these slides.
Oh yeah.
And then the whole journey of like being a young girl, like really finding finding what you are. I think there's so much to unpack here because I'm thinking like, is this therapy for me? I think
It's a bit therapeutic. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself while writing the second version.
Yeah, because you did one 2023, but like, what's the like? Because it's always good to look back at how we lived our life so that we can tie it up in a ribbon and then see, like in a neat bento box and say that's done. And I'm happy with that. And so what was it like looking back in your journey? And also, how is comedy also a bit like therapy for you? Being yourself on stage, or because it seems to be polar opposite from being a lawyer where you have to be straight-laced, you have to, you can't really let loose.
Yeah.
Right? But here you are just sharing and oversharing, which in the good way.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that. Yeah.
So I think for myself, for the creating the show it's actually it's not the first time I've done a solo show, and it's funny that you mentioned looking back, I feel like a lot of like poetry I've written is about my life, and I have done in 2012 I did my very first solo show, which was it was a spoken word show in the UK for the Edinburgh Fringe, because I was spoken word scene, and it was the first time the Edinburgh Free Fringe. So Peter Buckley Hill had this like free fringe at the Edinburgh Fringe, and they had a spoken word section. So I had a lot of friends in the spoken word scene who were like, yeah, let's like whatever, we're gonna bring a show up there. And so I was like, well, I've seen my friends are doing it. I have some time. Like this chance may never happen again. So I'm gonna like write a show and basically put it together, a bunch of my poems together. And again, it ended up being really autobiographical. It was like called "Foreigner, Go Home with Me," and it was all.
What was it about? Like a foreigner, like you're in the UK.
Yeah. It was.
And you have a foreigner, or
what? Yeah, as a foreigner. So it was about like looking back, it was like it's a bit cringe because like I feel like a lot of the ideas are like overdone now, but I feel like I like to think in 2012 I was the only person talking about these things, because I was like, oh, what does it mean to be a Singaporean in London, and like colonialism, what does it mean to be post-colonial, and like diaspora. I tried to make some connections. Like I tried to make a connection of like, oh, I'm walking in Lee Kuan Yew's footsteps when to England to study law too.
And especially train that with that notion of island so that we could all work as very rare in the UK.
Yeah, because I think as I talked about a bit in my show, is like so I got into like activism in the UK, and then in like 2012, but I was very very disconnected from Singapore at the time. So I was very inspired by like learning the story of that other guy who went to London that got into activism, Harry Lee. Like, there's something here we can explore. Because he was fighting the colonial.
It shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, I know. So I'm still like happy I did it. I think at my younger self I wanted to do that, and and it was fun. It was fun, and like honestly, I feel like the circles I was in like spoken word seems extremely white, and it was there was no real space for like sort of nuance or like critical ways to look at my ideas, because people were just it was generally like, oh yeah, the person is talking about like colonialism and stuff, like as an Asian person should be interesting, or and then but then I came back. It's interesting because I came back to Singapore, and suddenly like I was able to think of all my ideas and stories and ways I looked at my life in a much more critical way, and like thinking about the privilege I had, and like the real story. So in a way, like it sounds weird to think about, is I started doing spoken word when I was overseas, but coming back to Singapore sort of just like sharpened a lot of my thinking on a lot of things and a lot of my writing, I feel. But I think it's also maybe the world also becoming more like critical of things. Yeah.
So did you think you coming back gave you more perspective? Because then it was like kind of the reverse, right?
Yeah.
You know, when you're just living in the flow of things and it's trauma, but then when you go away and then you come back, you have this added perspective. So why comedy? I mean, because you know, you're doing all these fantastic things, you're pushing yourself as a young person, and I think we should definitely have things that I have a lot of cringeworthy things I did in the past, which I think it's really important because that's like building blocks of who you are and where you know get to where you need to go because you're figuring it out. And if you don't have those moments, that means you're not actually there to try something interesting or push yourself.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, like, you know, I mean, what is that process of unraveling, you know, yourself? Does it give you comfort so that you can tell your story and then that it's reflected back to you, or what does it actually mean to you? You know, and a lot of comics, obviously, you know, a lot of comedians, it's not a myth, but you know, there's a lot of sad story. You know, there's some sad, there's some shit we went through, right? And that's why you're on stage because that's the way to deal with it, right? Yeah. So you know, what's your story?
So it's so I really just got into comedy because I wanted to be on the stage and I wanted more time on the microphone. So when I was in the UK, I was performing in London. I was performing spoken word like at least once or like twice a week because there was a lot of stuff.
So,
and then
you're writing new things all the time.
Just like finding new ways to perform new work. Then it came out to Singapore in 2014. And it was actually going through sort of like, I want to say like a spoken word, like indie arts renaissance. There was a lot. I was really excited to come back actually because there was so much happening. I knew like I wanted my audience to be in Singapore, to be like a Singapore audience. Like, cause I felt I could just like talk more deeply about stuff that I was thinking about a lot. And like again, not to be racist, but or ageist, but I like wanted more of like the idea of like having young like Singapore like Asian audience, which was something I preferred to having to ending up in a room where everyone was like old white people.
I can imagine the
like
vibe
applauding, like applauding my stories about Singapore because it's the right thing to do. Or like someone who's only perspective of Singapore is like they want to stop over there or something.
It's a lot more nuance, isn't it? It's like a place of belonging and like different characters, different stories.
But anyway, so like I came back to Singapore and like there was a lot of spoken word, but there was still like not enough places to perform that I was like so I found the comedy scene and and also there's a small storytelling scene as well, and I kind of both. And in some weird way found the comedy scene a bit of respite from the poetry scene.
So I have very little experience. I mean, what experience I have, I think I was also exploring. So the very first time, because I'm a lot older than you, so the first time that spoken word came to Singapore was via Chris Mooney Singh, and this was word forward, and so I think it was like I don't know 2002 or 3. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we sort of got the first view with, you know, a lot of the you know, I think the Dadlers and then the now more serious poet. So I have a mini DVD tape of that. So I did my performance then as well. And I feel like there's such an intersection and play on words when you are wordsmith, you know, you love language. Like they kind of intersect, right? Poetry slamming, comedy, finding a way to connect with people with words, whether it's rhyming, whether it's making a point and making people laugh. But I just find that, you know, it's interesting in your journey that, you know, comedy has really, you know, kind of been that central force where it's brought together like community for you. It's, I think, a level of self-awareness because of the way you're able to. I mean, and let's talk about some of the material that you prepare for Gold Star.
So it's
bisexual.
so it's intricate. It's interesting because like I feel I still have like a love-hate relationship with comedy. That like I every time I went to like I think since the pandemic I've been like contemplating like quitting like every few months.
Really?
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like I've created like Siao Char Bors and it's like really successful. And but I think it used to be that it sort of became a community that I really enjoyed being in like 2014, 2015, 2016, because I think I was very used to sort of like the poetry scene, which was sort of like younger, maybe like more righteous. That like, oh yeah, we're making this important art, and like people were very precious, people being very precious about what they did, and everyone wanted to say the correct things. And then comedy was sort of like a place I didn't have to care, and like people were sort of like more proud of being degenerates in a way.
Yeah. You could always spoof like the poetry slammers as well, right? There's almost something quite comical about the way they, not all of them, but some of them take themselves so seriously.
Although I'm also hesitant to say this because there's definitely like I've become very cynical about stand-up, and I think there's definitely like even more comedians who take themselves way too seriously.
Really?
Or way too long. Yeah. Because I think it's interesting because I feel like a lot of the spoken word people tend to be very young, and a lot of those I knew, a lot of people age out of it. So, like they realize it's not the future in it. No one's going to become famous from this, so they like turn their attention to like more adult things. So I've like had a lot of friends who just like dropped out after a few years, and like I used to really like sometimes I still like blame the Singapore poetry scene for like not creating enough opportunities. But I also think it's like a small, not very well paid art form. Whereas stand up is the kind of thing where you go to an open mic and there's possibility you could become world famous. There's always one, and so like in some ways it's good and bad because it means that people you just like never stop trying. Like people, it's not really like some people will age out of it, but it's not really seen as like a silly youthful thing because we have like the idea is that you can keep going and one day you could have a career. It's interesting that people think they think of it more seriously because it's like you can have a career, whereas poetry can't really have a career.
You right, because I think the stamina that it takes to sustain that drive to get up on stage to write new material. I don't like having done like I just got into it, right? So even though my background has been like filming, whatever, it's all broadcast journalism, directing, producing, whatever, not and writing scripts, but just kind of like. For you to have that drive to be on stage and then to write new material, I would feel that it's a much larger thing about either wanting to be seen, whether it's wanting to be on stage, finding it cathartic, where it's like you are having audience kind of like give you validation as well. Straight away, if it's not a joke, it's Sanchez, that's funny, right? Yeah. And then you feel like, you feel good about yourself. So I'm about exploring that part of it where it's like, it is therapeutic, where it is a huge amount of validation, like straight away, right? And it's you. It's like you, what you're saying,
I think it shows I've become very cynical about comedy in general.
I'm like, I think you should like get it all the time. It's funny.
I think it was also like a great in a way, a great sort of like, as I said, a respite and a break from poetry, because I think in like stand up, it's a lot more. There's less for both. Both good and bad. It ends up being more. You get to be a bad person in stand up. Let's say, poetry, you're trying to be a good person. Stand up, be a bad person. It can be an act. You can like play with like more like gray areas. And so being an asshole on stage, and people.
I talked about my asshole on stage.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, exactly. So can
I just say that was a very freeing moment? Thanks for the platform.
Yeah.
I've never done that in my life.
Amazing.
I just wrote on a piece, like wrote, and then there's one thing about writing it, and then getting up on stage and telling everyone how you shut your dignity.
Yeah.
It's just because sorry, I'm just interrupting you because it's such a. I find it such an interesting craft, and perhaps maybe you're very seasoned at this point, right? It's like 10 years of doing this. Was there a moment where you were not cynical, where something happened, or you watched someone, or something inspired you to do it? Like you were like, I want to be like, I want to do that. Was there something where you were like, was it a performance? Was it just that made you want to try comedy?
Honestly, it was. I don't even know. I think it was. I wish I could say yes, but really, it was just meeting someone at a poetry night who's we're still friends. Who's still friends, and he was just like, "Yeah, we have a comedy open mic, and anyone can go." And I think up till then, I had thought of stand-up comedy as like a very misogynist kind of place, and I think it just felt accessible in Singapore. And it was the first place I did stand-up was a very small room, with like, we were lucky at this place, Muddy Murphy's. You remember Muddy Murphy's?
Oh, yes.
Somerset. It wasn't even in the proper bar. It was like the part that everyone forgot about. Everyone like ignored it. No one sat.
Is it usually at the back, right? Triple Head is like the one where the back. It's like,
not the outdoor, so it's like all the outdoor space, like back in this is like 14. It was a place that no one actually sat because you couldn't even get an order there.
So sorry.
They were like, empty space, and like, so again, super bright fluorescent light. Feels like fluorescent lights, I don't remember. But yeah, super bright, and we would like cheer whenever we had like more than 2 people in the audience.
Wow.
But I will say, I think I was probably early memory. So I started going there, and I thought, like, it's fun. I'm gonna write a new thing every week, and like, however many people will be there, it's just gonna be like a very low key, low stakes kind of thing. And slowly I began working my way up to be a host and stuff. But for me, I think maybe an inspiring, not like the moment, but definitely an inspiring moment that like kind of changed the way I look at performance was this amazing Filipino-Canadian comedian called Ron Josso. And he just like went in there to like an audience of maybe 4 to like 6 people and just killed. I just got everyone laughing, and that was when I realized, oh yeah, maybe this no matter what the performance is, you always have to honor whoever made it. And that's the mark of a good comedian, is that no matter how shitty the room is, no matter how shitty the audience is, you can make them laugh. You can kill in any room.
And that's also like being committed to the craft, right? And not being lazy and not going like, oh, there's like, 3 people. It's not worth my while.
Blaming the circumstances. So that's like, I guess one of my principles that like, as much as I stress about like not selling enough tickets, like no matter how small the show is, I'll always like never complain about the crowd, and always like honor whoever shows up. And in a way, sometimes I always find that like, if a room is difficult or like small or like not ideal conditions, that's kind of what makes stand-up fun, to like see people thrive in like the worst possible conditions.
I think that's such a beautiful way of putting it, and the way I could relate to it was actually not far from 111. So I used to work as an MC. Like I still do, but like I started like on the streets at Plaza Singapura.
Okay.
I mean, we wouldn't go anywhere, right? But I got paid. That's the difference. I was doing a paid job. You one of those girls on a microphone, and absolutely nobody would be listening to me. But they'd be walking by, wouldn't give me the time of the day, and I would just start chatting with myself on the mic, being excited about the deals that we have today. But I didn't do it though. So, but so obviously I had to be. But that's when I got I think that's when you have to put in some hard work, like the graph, the rejection, the slap in the face. It's a different way, but that's how you have thick skin. That's how you can stand up and you do believe it. There's just some similarities there, and kind of like putting yourself out there. And you know,
Yeah.
it's a big audience you get now. You have like over 100 people. It's such a cool vibe, you know. It's really kind of, you're not in a bar. It's like an auditorium. People are really watching the comics. It's 100% there. 100% like attention, 100% like there to have fun, and it's such a good vibe. You know, audiences, I think you've cultivated something special here. When are you going to leave your day job?
I did. I actually already did. I did like a few years ago. I did a few years ago. Because I only really started having like a 9 to 5 day job in 2020.
Okay.
In a way, like to answer your earlier question, like how do I juggle all of this? Is because I sort of like started organizing stuff when I had the time, and I've been doing it for enough years that it's sort of, I've managed to like, what's the words, make the system efficient, like smoothen out the system, streamline the system. Yeah. That sort of thing.
Wow.
I got qualified in law in like 2016, and then after that I immediately was like, okay, finally I've like fulfilled my parents' like requirements, and now I'm going to not do law. And
now I'm going to do comedy.
I went to teach in a tuition center, a very respected tuition center.
Yes, very lucrative as well, right? Being in
I think partly I didn't know how good I had it, in that like I was teaching them maybe about 2 hours by like 4 days a week, one day 9 hours. But on average I'd teach for like 3 hours a day, and the rest of the time was like marking, but like doing my own stuff.
So that's really how you manage to kind of like devote enough time to, because it's incredible what you've built, and it almost looks like magic. And I'm glad that you kind of talk us through this process, because it's a lot of sacrifice, time spent, you know, cultivating it, tending to it. And now that you have kind of grown this garden, this secret garden, you know, where we get to come into, you know, you can actually kind of like do other stuff and compartmentalize as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Where do you see like the thing for Siao Char Bors Comedy? Like how are you going to, I don't know, is there like a dream where, you know, getting it out in different cities maybe? What is the vision?
That's interesting, because I don't actually have one yet for Siao Char Bors Comedy. So I'm just quite happy with where it's at. I feel like it's maybe not a vision, but more like I know there's definitely more I can do to make it even better.
And it's like, man.
Yeah.
You should do it.
Basically, it's like I know what I can do. I just won't do it. Like, because I'm not really. I sort of like rely on the venue itself to help us promote. And sort of like rely on word of mouth. I could probably be doing more to market it, and I also can't really be bothered. I'm like, as long as I make a decent profit each time, a small profit. And like when I started, I started with this other girl who was like my first friend, my first like female friend in stand up.
Okay.
Her name is Marie, and it was hilarious because like when she first heard that I joined the scene, she was like, oh, like we were like weirdly similar. Like we both love animals. Like I love animals. She was working in like an animal industry, animal rescue type stuff, and we had both very similar backgrounds, and someone told her about me. She was like, oh, I can't stand this person, sounds too much like me. But then we actually met face to face, and she was like, oh my god, you're amazing. I was like, oh my god, you're amazing. And she had been treated quite, I think, kind of badly, like kind of not great in the scene. So we just in 2018 we decided we're going to start like our own show.
What happened? Can you just get into that? How is she's not treated?
I think
she was not invited on open mic, so she's just like not.
No, it was more like just like experienced sexism in the scene. Because again, that was in 2014. There was not a lot of women in the scene. Like we really. The comedy scene was like so different like before the pandemic, honestly, like 2018, 2019. Like there was definitely one year the only people who are not like men in the comedy scene, there was like, you could count on one hand how many people who were like not men in the scene. So much so that like when we first started Siao Char Bors, we had to like get people who were not comedians to perform.
Wow.
Like our very first, I totally forgot, but our very first feature was not even a comedian, but actually a scriptwriter called Jacqueline Chan. I don't know if you, she was like once the head of like Screenwriters Association of Singapore. And so we got her because like we knew she had a lot of friends, but more than that, she had like written some like pretty funny, like short biographical pieces and that sort of thing.
And she could perform it.
And yeah, and she also, because I had also run a storytelling night, and she had come to the storytelling night with some pretty funny stories. Which is also why like our logo sort of still says Siao Char Bors Comedy and Storytelling Night, because our original plan was that it wouldn't just be stand up; it would be like people just coming out and doing whatever they want. Like,
I see. So not to like ostracize people, like just to include everybody in case they didn't think that I can make that you can tell a story, everybody can tell a story, get up on stage.
Anyone just show up and tell a story. But we never, I think I never really developed storytelling part. But I guess it was always like a plan. Like one day maybe we'll like do a thing where people come and like just tell stories or something.
What do you think of the caliber of comics here in Singapore? Like, because obviously you've been here a long time. So what happened during the pandemic? Was it there were more like, because there was like an uptick of comedy scene in the world, TikTok and everything. So do you think that like precipitated a lot more females joining the scene after the pandemic?
No, I think it was more like maybe more people were like, the world could end tomorrow. Let's just like try this stuff.
Let's just talk about embarrassing shit. Tell everybody else.
Yeah, like you only live once. Like we may as well like do this. But yeah, actually, I don't really know. But it just felt like I don't know. The comedy scene did become a lot more equal. I know that the comedian Sam C, he ran a comedy workshop. That really like introduced a lot more women and like queer people into the scene. And like the comics, comics Sunny and Bree, they sort of joined on their own. And yeah, I don't really know. I think a lot of people just maybe got braver after like 2020, after they've been cooped up, and they're like, I just want to go out and like grab the world. So yeah, so it's been pretty exciting. It's pretty nice.
I mean, it's such an interesting journey, right? Because it is a journey, isn't it? It's like the whole kind of development of yourself and your material. And I remember I've seen like when I saw you perform actually, and you talked about like how you almost felt apologetic for having a boyfriend because I am thinking it would.
Yeah, it's funny, in a way that's kind of what
so you've been showing everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like what my Gold Star Bisexual show is about, because I realize I have a lot of like I don't know, material about like being bisexual, but like I have a boyfriend, and then I guess I began exploring like why do I feel apologetic, and like maybe how can I subvert that? So
it's so funny because sorry, I'm remembering how you were saying like, I'm shame underneath my I had an undercut, just didn't really want to be associated with like an SPG because like that's unwell. So it was so funny how you were fighting against the norm, but and yet at the same time when you're kind of lumped into it, like it's really interesting to kind of like live life through that lens where it's like, and you who you say you are because you say you are someone on stage, but then, can you totally just change your mind and then that be okay as well, It's like, I think identity is a very interesting thing and it's always shifting, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
It seems like, especially for someone like you, it's very fluid.
I think what I like about stand-up, so in a way, like, I feel like I accepted a lot of myself, partly because of spoken word, because it's against a very welcoming, very queer kind of space. So like, I've never really like had a problem like I don't know, accepting that I was queer, because that was like a safe space for me to like talk about being queer. And then I feel like stand-up is where I get a chance to like delve into like inconsistencies and where I feel uncomfortable. And sort of like with spoken word was sort of about stuff that like made me angry. I think stand up is where I look into stuff that makes me feel shame, that makes me feel
Mm.
I
Wow.
think spoken word is more like where I try and like examine other people's discomfort or like societal hypocrisy, and then stand up is more about like I don't know, my own hypocrisy,
Mm.
that sort of thing.
It's almost like kind of like there are layers to it, right? It's like a cosmic onion, and like you have to kind of peel away that I'm angry at the world, I'm angry at all the shit you're doing. Fuck you all.
Yeah.
But then actually, if you look in the mirror, you're like, no, I'm actually angry at a specific person in a specific time, in a specific incident maybe in my life.
Yeah.
And that,
Point.
you know, and because, you know, especially activism, I mean, I've gone into that before as well. I remember when you said that, I wrote a poetry slam about George Bush when, you know, he invaded Iraq. And then I also then went to make a film about it, a short film that was like an activism piece. And I was just like such an angry young person. And I had no idea why I was so angry. It was like, it's all George Bush's fault. But there was some serious shit going on.
See, I guess that's really the feeling of the time. I remember like feeling like 2004, 2005.
Well, absolutely. But it was so much anger. I mean, obviously there was like, you know, World Trade Center and all that. It was very tragic. But like, I think as a young person, it's kind of like you're dealing with what's happening inside and then what's happening outside, and projecting
for sure.
the maybe anger that cannot be expressed, that it can be expressed on world issues. It can be expressed, and I feel like comedy, having to peel back maybe like, you know, the nuance of your sexuality and like talking to somebody. Yeah. Someone darling on the floor. Someone just like someone just is this your pet boyfriend? It's like, hello? It's a doggy. Is it a corgi? Yeah. Oh my god. You're just like the queen. You're so cute. You're so chubby.
But yeah, she can open doors on her own.
I feel like she's going, excuse me, and she's being very posh. May I? Yeah, no, so you know, I think it's very interesting when you talk about the shame of, you know, because I think what it is comedy forces you to be honest about who you are, and you need to be honest with yourself before you can be honest with the audience.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can choose not to be. Obviously, you can talk about kind of like, you know, sort of triggering stuff, but like very good comedy. To your dog.
No, I guess close the door behind me.
Okay. So do you yeah, I feel like, you know, the kind of comedy that really gets us is obviously the stuff that's really honest. So I enjoyed what you talked about, like the nuance and the journey, that it's not that stereotype, like, you know, I'm a dyke, I'm a bitch, or like, you know, I'm loud and proud. Yes, there's elements of that, but there's so much more underneath that, you know, which kind of normalizes it, I think, and helps people to understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, as I said, I think I like to, I think, it helps me to delve into like what I find uncomfortable about myself and sort of a way to like reclaim it. Like the whole thing of like, I don't know, appearing in public. I just describe it as appearing in public. It's also a lot of my paranoia that I think delve into, but like a whole thing of like appearing in public in close proximity to like a white guy. And like, what that means, and like just my own like dealing with like people, thinking about that.
Yeah, because there's a certain stereotype here in, you know, Singapore, and it's in the 90s, like in the noughties.
My own view of myself.
So. It's interesting though. I mean, there's one thing about race, there's one thing about privilege, there's one thing about privilege by association, and then there's also like, you know, I'm not in this circle, it's not this intersection, that's not who I am. I can feel that, you know, of what, you know, you're trying to describe. And I just wonder, you know, has it always been so easy for you to deal with it? Because you talk about it so much. Did you have to come up to your parents? Was there a process of real hard, like, kind of struggle or a discord within yourself?
Yeah, I would say yes and no. It's like I never really officially came out to my parents, but it was more like at some point they like there were too many signs. Like I was appearing in like they were seeing my face in all these like queer events. That were famous and like
Your Instagram says that Singapore's first openly bisexual like comedian in Singapore. Did they not see that? Yeah, did they not see that? Did they not read your Instagram?
like they're not on social media, so that's the thing.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay.
I guess they know theoretically like I am bisexual. They know what bisexuals are. They definitely like suspect that I have had like girlfriends in the past. Like weirdly, they will still like remind me. They'll randomly, my dad will be like, "Oh yeah, I remember that girl in secondary school. Like, what happened to her? You still talk to her?" And that girl happened to be like my crush that like I never told them about or something. Or like they'll talk about like they'll randomly talk about exes I brought home, and they're like, but as like my so-called friends, they are like, "Oh, what did you think of that? How are they doing now?" I'm like, "Oh, no, we don't talk anymore."
Oh my, so it's not like a breakup. You would never use those kind of terms. And are they pleased?
So
Are they pleased with their boyfriend?
I think mostly they're relieved. They're relieved. There's definitely another joke in there that like basically if your parents, I don't know, if you're bisexual and your parents suspect that you are queer, they will like if you unfortunately, right, if you date someone of a different gender, of like the correct so-called like correct gender that looks straight enough, they will let you get away with anything. They'll let you get away with murder.
But expectations are really low.
Thank God. Like my mom. It was really funny because like I introduced her to him. Like I also didn't want to tell her about him because she can be
so maybe a face.
Yeah, so like I introduced her literally at my book launch.
Okay.
Like I think I was dating for about a year, and I like did not dare to introduce him to her because like, she has been very judgmental of like my sister's boyfriend.
Oh wow!
And so so I waited like a year, and then basically it was like before the launch of my poetry collection, that I was like, oh, by the way, like you'll see this guy I'm seeing, he'll be there. And I guess
pretend to be cool and just like something.
Yeah, I guess I introduce you after since you're supposed to be at the same event. Something.
Oh my goodness!
So,
wow.
Quite funny because like my mom and my sister were like looking around at all the people in the event, and they were like, okay, who is the most inappropriate person that I will disapprove of the most?
Except when they put you in that bucket now, they're like they rather kind of like really, have set themselves up for just like just disappointments. So that there's anything more than that, then it's like people for the second just expect the rest. And I mean, you've done so many incredible things. You publish your own book, like you said, your poetry collection of poetry books. Will you be doing anything like that anytime soon, or anything?
Again, that's something I've been working on. I have enough poems for another book. I just need to sit down and put them together and like make them make sense together. So I would like to publish another book soon.
And what's your poem? What are they mostly about? Like, what type? Is it observational? What type of? Give us a range of topics of things that you write on.
I'm really bad at answering this. I'll talk about this collection. Was also about like my life of like all the places I've been and like the people I met. I describe it as like strange. Okay, so every time I try to describe the book, I come up with a new tagline. The latest is what's it? Basically, it's about good times in strange places and strange times in good places.
I like that.
It's also like a field guide to. Yeah, I can't remember. I was going to get a copy of the book and like, but also basically it's just about like community, sort of like honestly like communities and like different communities I found in different places and like different kinds of finding my own family and like different ways of finding home and like in different outside of Singapore, but also like within Singapore and like making finding community anywhere.
I think it's a very core theme in your work, right? Like belongingness, like like
Yeah.
community, finding your place, like finding your tribe, and then you're building your tribe as well. You know, there's like with what you're doing in especially in the comedy scene, and empowering like a lot more women, giving them space and voice. And I would imagine it's something that you were looking for that in the first place, and that's why you started.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
and I mean, it's interesting to see how far you can push this, especially in a place like Singapore, where I think it's getting better. Is it getting better?
I think
Is
so.
it-
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think in a way, like being able to create like Siao Char Bors sort of like makes me I don't know what's the word for it, but yeah, it makes me realize that no matter, in a weird way, like no matter how pissed off the scene makes me, or like no matter how like again, how difficult it is to be like a queer performer and try and break into the Singapore scene, and like how difficult it is for like female comics and stuff, and like the existence of like, I don't know, misogynists in the scene. I think just knowing that like I am creating my own space, and it's not like some what's the word, circle jerk kind of thing where we all congratulate each other, but it is like genuinely objectively good, and like people want to be there, and like people have a good time, and it's not just like, again, not backpatting kind of like not super cliquish, but it's like we have actual quality, and it's a good show that can hold its own against other shows in Singapore. That I think that sort of like makes me just like, yeah, feel less angry about the scene in general, and just realize that, like, yeah, actually there is space for this kind of thing, and there's space for like the kind of art I want to see.
So were you angry before because you didn't see representation? You didn't see people including queers, women and queer in the scene?
It was more like very ego driven, of like feeling like I don't have a place in the scene, like this, like I will never be good enough, or like the scene doesn't have a space for me, or so I think honestly that's like part of the reason why I sort of prefer organizing to slightly prefer organizing now to like doing a lot of open mics. In that I get too caught up in competition and like competing with people, and like comparing like, ooh, who got what gig, as or like who did better on that open night, blah blah, who got like who's further along in their career.
So when does it, like how long does it take, or what's the turning point for a comic or comedian before they kind of like hit the big time or like mainstream? Like what does it take in Singapore? You know, because I feel like they're out here, right?
It's really like, I guess that's also the other good thing about comedy. As much as I talk about like, oh, striking it big, it's really like up to the comedians to define it for themselves. And like, I guess there's different measures that you can have. I think like some comedians aim for like a Netflix show, some aim for like to, I guess, do a lot of corporate gigs, some aim for and I think for me it's a lot of like figuring out like, what do I want because other people have it, what do I just want for myself, or what really gives me satisfaction. And then I realize actually what brings me satisfaction is like doing Siao Char Bors, doing my own solo show, and yeah, and I think I still very easily get caught up in like, do I have like enough people like making Instagram stories about me, or like people like liking, following me after a show. So I think in a way, yeah, like creating Siao Char Bors is sort of maybe also a bit therapeutic, in the sense of like I make it less about myself and more about other people, and just making sure everyone has a good time, and everyone and it becomes more about what I do rather than me personally. What I sort of like being what's the word? Like how they say, how like the best kind of comedy host, is the one that makes such a good show that no one really remembers them afterwards.
Wow.
That they're not the center of attention, but they are creating the perfect conditions for the show to be the perfect show. but they're not the ones hogging the limelight.
That's beautiful. And it's that space, right? I mean, you're in the whole space, and then you create that space where, people who are waiting in the green room, like I'm sat there in the open mic, and people are just like being so encouraging to each other, being like, yes, that's a really good line, like that's really awesome. People like just, there's not that sense of competition, like, it was community. It was definitely community. And I think that's what I felt. The difference was like, it was kind of like open, and people congratulated each other and they celebrated their wins, on stage. And I think that's there's a way of measuring success, like the metrics, right? Of like, okay, with the likes and whatever that you talked about, is someone coming, with a good punchline, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. But the intangible stuff, which is being built, which is that feeling of everyone getting together, it is tribal, and I feel like that success of it's much more enduring and endearing as well, where people kind of find a sense of belonging for themselves, So I really congratulate you with just being able to, I think, with the force of your personality and who you are. As you know, like if you work in a company, the CEO would dictate the culture, right, of the show. And I feel like you pretty much, it's who you are, the essence of who you are, that kind of shapes the type of show, the kind of people that would want to come. And it's like the last show was insane. Like it was so like out of this world. Everyone was so interesting, funny, and it didn't feel like there was a competition. It felt like everyone had their own way,
Sure.
And then there was such and I would like to see your full length show. I had to leave because I was really, really kind of feeling very tired from my endoscopic accident.
Yeah.
So I've been having to go out and talk about my electric colonoscopy as well. But but I did catch definitely the start of it, and I just thought, you put it all out there, and I think that in itself gives other people kind of, I know it sounds very cliche, I'm gonna say it. It's really cliche. It gives them permission to be themselves. The more they see representation, the more they see someone who, they can do this, or they can talk about that, or they can talk about how uncomfortable it is to be like bisexual in this way, or whatever it is. It's like it's a space where when there's that level of honesty, then I think there's growth. There's more kind of like
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. It's interesting because I told this story in the show towards the end, but it was something that really happened after the first time I did the show, which I still I saw the whole video of that, and I thought it was not as good as I remember. But anyway, it inspired me to do like a better show. But I got a message from someone who, because that one was like we sold like 160 tickets, and it was like very large. It was I think there was a lot. The audience had a lot more like queer women in it, like way more. And it's funny because like there's a reviewer, one of the reviewer, our friend, mentioned like this was Stephanie's crowd, and like everyone was laughing. But honestly, I would say it was not really my crowd. Like a lot of people were not there to see me, I think, and I didn't know like most of the people there. So I was glad that they laughed. But so it's interesting because like the show in September was like way more my crowd, and a lot of like, because I think it was more heavily advertised because it was a larger venue, and because the SAMC was running it, so they basically spent a lot more money on advertising than me. And so we got a lot of people who went partly because of the title as well. So I got one such person. I've never met her before, still haven't met her, but she said she went just because it had the word bisexual in it, because she was bisexual. And she went there with her boyfriend, and she had been in like the lesbian scene, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this story, but anyway, it's okay.
It's not like you don't know who she is. You don't know who she is.
Yeah, so she said that she sort of like basically felt real uncomfortable when walking into the projector just because she saw all her old friends, like of like queer women, like when she had,
and that she was a guy.
just embarrassing to go there with a boyfriend. But then like after the show, she just like felt okay about it.
Wow.
I didn't feel like she had to be embarrassed at all.
Wow.
Like, oh yeah, that's like I don't even really intend for my comedy to be empowering at all. I'm glad that someone else felt like that.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a space in there where you own, like you name it and you tame it, and then when you can give it language as well, then you can control, like, I guess, the way you feel, and it's not just kind of like emotions running wild about it. It's very interesting.
Yeah. So in a way, like, again, not to bring it back to like the analogies of like, so again, like spoken word, I think of it as like everyone has a right to be here, and like we are all like good people, and like everyone, all identities should be celebrated, and we should do the right thing by like being nice to each other. Whereas stand up is kind of like, yeah, I'm like this, like I'm what's it so sort of like, okay, so maybe got it again. I feel like the spoken word way of like talking about from my experience, like, so spoken word way of like talking about like sexualities and like my sexuality is like, I've used a lot of humor, yes, and it's like but I feel like a lot of my writing about bisexuality in spoken word is like, yeah, like I am a proud bisexual, and like I've gone through all the suffering, and like fuck you if you don't accept it. Whereas in stand up, it's kind of like, yes, I'm a degenerate bisexual, and like you're gonna like it because I don't care.
And then it's like the first one, but like doing poetry slam, you're always fucking angry about something. It's like, this is my thing, take it. You just want to take it.
Yeah.
But whereas if you're comedy, you just kind of like, it's a bit not lighthearted, right? There's some heavy shit in comedy as well, right? People deal with some,
in a way, because I guess I see it as like there's power again. Humor is way of picking back power.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And also I feel like humor, but also an element of like I don't know, subversion. Subversion in stand up. And like
we're talking about things that you're not supposed to talk about.
Commissioned to be a bad person, basically.
And also that, like, the taboo stuff, the things that you're not allowed to talk about, and then you're not talking about it in like a hush hush, like you're laughing about it. You are just going over the top with it, and like that is very empowering, because that kind of like just makes all that we're the things that we sweep under the carpet, we just bring it up, and we just like we can deal with it, and we can laugh about it, and we can just talk about it and not feel this shame, whatever is with carrying it.
For sure.
Steph, DogFoot, thank you so much for your time. We've come to the end of the hour. I can't believe it. We've chatted for an hour, but thank you so much for being my first ever podcast guest. I was really like, it's kind of like, felt like I'm led by spirit, to do this. It was really weird. We had a chat, and then I learned about what you've done, and I'm like, I think we're gonna do this. So thank you so much. Let me know when we quit your day job.
Okay. Like I said, I basically quit. I actually quit freelancing to have a day job because I found it too stressful. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, I found it way more stressful because it was like I had to constantly like say yes to all my opportunities and like not turn any gig down no matter how shitty it was. Whereas like with a day job, I can like have more boundaries. I can tell people who want to, I don't know, book me for like stand up or whatever, like go away. I have a real job, so go away. I have a job. But it's all I can like be more picky with stuff. But I mean, one day it would be nice to like be able to make money by like being in an office for most of the day.
I don't know. That sounds like, it sounds like it's gonna come around sooner than you can imagine. You have no idea. The stars are bright. The future is bright. I've got to wear sunshades. So thank you for your time, and thank you for being so empowering, and thank you for doing this chat.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot about myself in this chat also. Really.
Is there not many female comics who have paved the way for others to take the stage, and I think that whatever happens, you have already, and you are already creating history, you know?
Thank you.
Even if it's 10 years, it's a long time, and it's going to get, you're going to be in the history books of like the comedy scene in Singapore,
Thank you.
you know? So, yeah. Yeah.
But then we don't mind the thing about it.
Okay. I need to let you go.